5 True Creepy School Teacher Stories. Story 1: Mr. Metzger's Macabre Collection. Our first story takes us to the gritty streets of Boston in the 1980s. Mr. Metzger was a high school history teacher who commanded respect from even the toughest students. Rumor had it that he was a war veteran with a dark past, and that he had killed enemy soldiers in an ambush, earning him a Silver Star. But little did anyone know, Mr. Metzger had brought back more than just medals from the war. One fateful night, a group of rebellious students decided to break into what they thought was an auto parts store, hoping to score some cash. But as they crept through the darkness, they realized they had made a terrible mistake. They weren't in a store at all, but in Mr. Metzger's house. And what they found inside was the stuff of nightmares. Necklaces made of human ears, newspaper clippings about a Vietnam massacre, and a Colt .45 ready to be fired. The students barely escaped with their lives, but the memory of Mr. Metzger's predatory glare would haunt them for years to come. It wasn't until decades later that one of the students, now a grown man, encountered Mr. Metzger in a hardware store. With a wolfish grin, the old teacher spoke the chilling words, "I never forget a face." Story 2: The Headmaster's Fiery Secret. Across the pond, in a quaint British town, sits a school with a dark history. The headmaster, Mr. Sylvester, was known for his cold demeanor and prison camp-like welcoming speeches. But no one could have imagined the terrible secret he was hiding. One day, a fire broke out in the school, engulfing the building in flames. As students and teachers fled for their lives, a figure emerged from the inferno, the school janitor, his body consumed by the blaze. The sight of his charred, smoking corpse had children screaming in terror. But the real horror was yet to come. It turned out that Mr. Sylvester wasn't who he claimed to be. His real name was Bernard Lee, and before becoming a headmaster, he had set fire to his own home with his wife and children inside, all to escape his family and start a new life. The tragedy had been covered up, and Mr. Sylvester had been living a lie ever since. As the truth came to light, the community was left reeling. How could they have trusted their children's education to a man capable of such unspeakable evil? The scars left by Mr. Sylvester's actions would never truly heal. Story 3: The Substitute's Morbid Lessons. It was just another day at school when Mr. Witzbold, a thin, sickly-looking substitute teacher, arrived to take over a biology class. But from the moment he stepped into the room, the students knew something was off. Instead of teaching about cells and organisms, Mr. Witzbold had a different lesson plan in mind. With a wolfish grin, he began to describe in gruesome detail the fragility of the human body. He spoke of decapitation, of how the eyes would continue to send images to the brain even after the head was severed. As he singled out a shy, mousy girl to be his unwitting assistant, Mr. Witzbold's descriptions grew more and more disturbing. He told the class about the boats, an ancient Persian method of execution designed to cause as much suffering as possible. The students sat in horror, unable to escape his macabre teachings. When the bell finally rang, the students fled the classroom, their minds filled with the substitute's twisted words. Some would never return to school, too traumatized by the experience. Others would be haunted by nightmares for years to come. But one thing was certain, Mr. Witzbold's lessons would never be forgotten. Story 4: The King in Yellow. Deep within the ancient halls of the Blue Coat School for Boys, a sinister secret lay hidden. It was there that a student named Martin discovered a strange book called The King in Yellow. Its pages were filled with cryptic text and a strange, pale yellow symbol that made his head hurt just to look at it. Curious about the book's contents, Martin approached his English teacher, Mr. Brady, for guidance. But the moment he mentioned the title, Mr. Brady's demeanor changed. He warned Martin to stay away from the book, to forget he had ever seen it. But Martin couldn't resist the allure of the mysterious tome. He began to read it in secret, poring over its pages in the library after school. The more he read, the more he felt a sense of dread washing over him. It was as if the book was reading him, peering into his very soul. One night, as Martin attempted to decipher the book's cryptic text, he was overcome with a sudden illness. He fled the library, leaving the book behind. But when he returned to retrieve it, the book was gone. Weeks later, tragedy struck. Another student, Mark Blackwell, brutally murdered his own parents with a claw hammer. The only other person in the library that fateful night? None other than Mark Blackwell himself. Years passed, and Martin tried to put the strange events behind him. But when he learned of Mr. Brady's suicide, he couldn't help but wonder if the teacher had finally succumbed to the same dark forces that had consumed Mark Blackwell. And when the police informed Martin that a single book was missing from Mr. Brady's collection, he knew with chilling certainty which title it was. The King in Yellow. Story 5. The Janitor's Closet. In a small Midwestern town, there was a high school janitor named Mr. Hawkins. He was a quiet man, always keeping to himself as he went about his work. But there was something about him that made the students uneasy. Maybe it was the way he would sometimes stand perfectly still, staring off into space for minutes at a time. Or maybe it was the strange, musty odor that seemed to follow him wherever he went. Whatever the reason, the students knew to give Mr. Hawkins a wide berth. One day, a group of students decided to play a prank on the old janitor. They snuck into his closet, hoping to find something they could use to embarrass him. But what they found instead would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The closet was filled with jars, each containing a strange, murky liquid. And floating in those jars were human body parts, eyes, ears, fingers, and even a small, shriveled heart. The students screamed in horror, running from the closet as fast as their legs could carry them. When the police arrived to investigate, they made a shocking discovery. Mr. Hawkins had been using the school's furnace to dispose of the bodies of his victims. For years, he had been living a double life as a serial killer, preying on the innocent and vulnerable. The town was left reeling from the revelation. Parents hugged their children tighter, wondering how they could have let such a monster into their midst. And the students who had discovered Mr. Hawkins' terrible secret would forever be haunted by the memory of those jars, and the evil that lurked within their school's walls. So there you have it, dear viewers, 5 true stories of creepy school teachers that will keep you up at night. If you like this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell so you never miss an upload. Leave us a comment with your own scary encounters, and thanks for tuning in to Scaratastic.